almost 2 years since Just a Shark started, since this project kind of came into being.
Not really for me, because I suppose I did start it in the first lockdown. I guess sort of towards the tail end or mid to tail end of 2020, but because I couldn't actually do anything live for such a long time, it kind of only felt really like I'd started at sort of this year, pretty much, I suppose, and from summer this year, which was when we were, able to start gigging properly, I suppose. Yeah, and I'd only really properly released a single, well, that wasn't a self-release through my record label in 2021. So I guess that's when it felt like it started properly. Everything else was sort of gearing up to it, and then it felt like 2021 I did, in essence, really. Yeah,
2020 was very much a year of kind of preparation. But then you dropped your first single in 2020, Mission Impossible. That was a 2020 single, right?
Yeah, kind of funny, really, because I had no idea of what I really even wanted to do. Jaws of the Shark wasn't even really a sort of a pipe dream at that point. It was just like I was just writing stuff because there was nothing else to do. And I had not, I was just bored, and I had no real intention of actually really starting a musical project, and no sort of real thought into how I'd make it work, and it'd actually come to fruition, and I'd start playing it live and whatnot. That wasn't really an intention of mine. So yeah, I was just putting stuff out, and I kind of had the intention of putting stuff out like every month, because I'd written loads of stuff. I was like, well, I may as well just do it, because there's no plan behind it and whatnot. And then I actually only put one or two, maybe three songs out, so probably only about 2 to 3 months later. And then I got contacted by some people, by my record label currently, and and then it sort of went from there. And then I was like, well, okay, maybe I need to actually put some thought behind this and take it a little bit more seriously. But I mean, we were still in bang in the middle of a lockdown at that point anyway, so there's only a certain amount you can really do, and that was, I think it came at a good time for me, because then I put my first release with that label out, which was a song called Demon Dream. I put that out, and then the months following that ended up doing quite well for me, and then the months following that sort of led into gigs being able to happen again and stuff. So timing wise, it was really good.
What you were saying there about when the label approached and you sort of felt like you had to start taking it a little bit more seriously, think slightly differently about it. How did you ensure that didn't impede what you were actually creating? Because part of the appeal of those early singles is how raw they were, and how they were just kind of coming from that free space.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I suppose because we were still in that situation in a lockdown and whatnot, I was still kind of restricted by the restrictions that we all had on us, because at that point I still wasn't able to really easily go and get into a studio and record properly and whatnot. So I was still writing very much from my spare room at the time. So from a production sense, it was always kind of going to be raw like that, just because I wasn't able to do it any other way. So from a songwriting perspective, it didn't really change anything for me anyway, because I thought that part of the appeal and the reason that I got approached was because of that. So it didn't really make any sense in changing it, and I don't really know any other way of doing it anyway. So that's kind of just the way I like to do it. And yeah, I suppose everything else comes with production and financial budgets and whatnot in order to get it, to put more of a sheen on it and stuff like that. But that comes down to like discussing what sort of direction you want to take stuff in beforehand anyway. So yeah, it didn't really impact me too much, but I definitely did have a thought process behind it. It's sort of interesting when you get something that sort of kind of does well for you. You kind of do think, well, maybe I need to move everything else to be sort of more in line with that, and maybe I need to write stuff that's a little bit more in line with that. But then again, if you do that, then you're just not really writing for yourself. You're just writing for, someone else or for a specific person, and then all your stuff ends up sounding the same anyway. So, so try to shy away from that as much as possible, and just kind of keep it flowing and free and fun.
Yeah. I mean, with what you have now and the sound that Jaws the Shark is, with what you were saying too about how you started writing, at the beginning of the pandemic, was it always destined to sort of take the shape that it has, or could it have gone off in potential other directions when you first began?
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I was right before the pandemic hit. I was writing a lot of stuff with my friend Brendan. That was a collaborative thing, and it was quite different to the way that Jaws is now, because we were both in two separate places. We were both in London when we started that, and just so happened to be like maybe a month or two before the pandemic. And had the pandemic not happened, we'd likely have just carried on down that path. And that was way more kind of like a rocky thing, but with way more sort of electronic vibes and sort of purposeful electronic drums and things like that. So it definitely was more of a collaborative thing, whereas Jaws stuff is literally my sound, so it's not but it could have easily have gone down that route, and when I first started writing Jaws stuff, because there was no pressure on it, no anything, I literally was just writing whatever I felt like, and my influences are pretty broad as far as they go anyway. So there was some stuff I'd write on acoustic and it sounded quite country. There was some stuff I'd have on a keyboard and I'd just go full Calvin Harris.
Scotland's on.
Yeah, there you go. Just whatever I felt like, really. And then I sort of did fine tune Jaws a little bit when I thought I'd end up making stuff more sort of scuzzy and fuzzy anyway, just because that's sort of the stuff that I like to listen to, and just sort of naturally the way that I will always go. So sometimes those songs that didn't quite sound like, or that sounded completely different, I would then take it into a more sort of Jaws environment and just whack a load of sort of heavier drums on it, some fuzzier vocal and guitar basically. Yeah, but I quite like starting songs off in one way and then just making them Jaws, because the difference, and then you've got two separate versions of the same song, but it's quite interesting to see the origin of it and then where it's gone afterwards. How
fully developed are the songs before you begin to turn them into a Jaws song? Are they kind of completed pieces of work and then you put them through this filter, or how does that kind of function?
Usually it's nothing more than being out in, I don't know, Tesco. Other supermarkets are available. And just and having an idea in my head, and so I'll look like some maniac singing something in my phone, or just like humming a melody and stuff like that, and then I'll be like, I can't wait to get home, because then I'll sit down and I'll kind of fully form it in my head, or certainly have like an idea of where it's going, and then you've got like a normal, relatively sort of universal structure in songwriting, so like verse, chorus, verse, middle eight, whatever. So sort of try and keep it as simple as possible structurally, and then we'll build sort of around that. But I quite like doing everything in like, if I can, I kind of like doing everything in like one sitting. So if I sit down and start writing a song, or developing from a voice note on my phone, I will just spend as long as it takes to get it to a point where I've pretty much got it done, and then anything else is just additional, and that can range from taking like 20 minutes to 8 hours sometimes. Wow. Depending on how like in depth it is, or how much I want to put to it production wise and stuff like that. So, but yeah, I mean, I have a lot of late nights because I just sort of start with an idea at like 5 or 6 p.m. and then I'll be going till 3 a.m, just because I don't like to come back to it when I haven't sort of finished it, because I feel like I lose a lot of the vibe of it. It's not to say I haven't done it that way and come back to it, because I have, but I always prefer to sort of try and get the bare bones of it at least down in its fullest form in one sitting.
Yeah, I guess it's easier to toy with something in future that's fully completed than something that's kind of half.
Totally, and then you can sort of, the next day you can get up, go about your day, you can whack your headphones in, you can go for a walk, and then like little bits just sort of seem to jump out at you, like BVs and any other bits of guitar or bit of keys here and whatnot. And that's the thing. If I've got the raw sort of bare bones of it, then things start jumping out at me, and then it's just a case of like literally just adding those bits in. So it's pretty pretty easy. I find it easier to do it that way. I know for some people it can be like, a sort of slow burner of a process to get through one song. I think that probably makes it easier because it's just me as well. Sometimes if you got a 4 or 5 piece band and everyone's putting in their input, it can make the process a little bit slower because you've got to take everyone's opinion into account and stuff like that, basically.
Had you played in bands prior to this? Yeah,
I've always been in and around it. I think I joined my first band when I was 17. Actually, on my 17th birthday it was, I remember. And then so I did that for a little bit, and then I ended up falling into like the sort of behind the scenes role and working with a lot of bands as crew, so as like selling merch and traveling with them and tour managing them and stuff like that. So, and that took up quite a lot of my time. It doesn't allow a lot of time for writing because you're just always around doing other stuff. And but I'd always wanted to get back into it for myself anyway. And I suppose that a pandemic coming along and wiping the carpet from underneath you and all the work that you've got lined up, it's sort of the perfect excuse to get back into it. So I didn't waste any time as soon as the pandemic happened, and here I am still doing it, I guess. So yeah. Are you still tour managing now? I have done little bits and bobs. It's really hard to do the two things together because if I'm away with another act for 3 weeks, a month, sometimes even longer, I don't really get a chance to pick up an instrument in that time and rehearse my stuff or write new stuff. So when I come off of the tour, it's super hard to get back into it again, and you sort of lose a bit of the rhythm that you had, and it's harder to get back into it. Bless you. Thank you. So yes, I have. I'm sort of doing little bits and bobs now, like one-offs and stuff like that. But eventually, I probably will. I'll probably just focus on this. Well, I will just focus on this once it starts getting a little bit more hectic for me. Did lockdown kind of make you reevaluate that lifestyle to a certain extent, with the stillness being such an antithesis to that constant movement of tour managing? Yeah, totally. It's one of those things that you sort of get into a bit of a whirlwind with, and before you know it, you've been on the road for like 9 months of the year, and it's pretty weird to have that realization and look back. I mean, you get to do a lot of cool stuff. You get to travel a lot and see a lot of stuff, but at the same time, you can definitely be in some cities and just be like, I don't want to be here on a Tuesday night. So it could be a bit of a drag sometimes as well. But I definitely did sort of reevaluate it, and then thought, well, because when I started this, it was super exciting and nice for me to start going out on my own, and I really just sort of opened my eyes to what I had been sort of missing out on for a little bit, and that maybe this is something that I just actually want to sort of pursue properly. And so that in itself has sort of definitely helped to sway my decision to sort of bow out from that side of it slowly. I'd say bow out. I still do all my own stuff. So if I've, all my own gigs, I've still got to sort out wherever I'm going. And I kind of enjoy doing that now. So, I'm still doing it to a degree. It's just a lot calmer and easier when it's actually my stuff. I'm only telling myself what to do. Less people to worry about as well. It's not where's the drummer gone. Totally. It's yourself. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah. Are you doing these shows that you're going out with? Are you out with a band, or are you out on your own on stage, or what's the script there with the way that it kind of functions live? Yeah, so everything I've done up until this point, I've done as a 2-piece. So with me and a drummer. And I've been quite fortunate over these years of working in music to have worked with a lot of really good other bands. And so I've poached a lot of their drummers for my shows, to be honest with you, which is great because it means that I have great drummers. The issue is that I have to keep sort of flip-flopping between them because they've got other bands and they're doing their own stuff, so it's always chopping and changing, but it's worked so far, and then the rest of the stuff I sort of write into a program, so into what I'm using now, Logic, and then I will send it through like an interface, and then I'll run some bits of track from a laptop. So visually it's a 2-piece, and then some track bits. But now moving forward for my next few shows that I've got coming up, like one on Saturday, I've got a bass player in for that. So expanding to a 3-piece, and then even another guitarist in a couple of songs. So moving it up to a 4. So it's quite interchangeable really for me. I can either be as bare bones as possible and just be a 2, or I can move it up to a 4. It's whatever I feel like, and whatever, you know, the kind of show is. Budget plays into it. It's a lot easier traveling with 2 people than it is 4. So, but yeah, I mean, it's quite nice doing it that way, and just knowing that I can sort of strip it back, or, you know, expand it whenever I want.
Imagine it helps to keep things fresh for you two on stage, kind of having all these different like incarnations of the project in a live setting. Totally,
yeah. It definitely keeps it fresh, and it's it sounds different, you know, both ways, and that's cool. And I like being able to just have the option of doing it one way or the other. You know, it's not like I started this as a 5-piece and that's what people know it as. I can sort of do it whichever way I feel is most suitable.
In the fashion that it sounds different, you know, inherently, like you're saying, with it being a 2-piece, if you're playing like that, or if you're playing with a 4-piece, what do you think are the main advantages for the sound that you do, and having it as a 2-piece or having it as a 4-piece? Like, what are the main advantages of all the different kind of incarnations you can have of it?
I think visually the 2-piece looks really good for me, and the way that I actually record the stuff in, if I do it as a 2-piece and play it from track, is I don't tend to use the stems from any actual recordings that I've got. So I don't use like mastered stems. I'll record them in live so that it has more of a live feel. So if there's bass coming through the PA, I record it in so that there are little, like, you know, live, I don't want to say mistakes because I don't make the mistakes, but
happy accidents.
But you know what I mean? Exactly, yeah. It allows a little bit more sort of freedom that way, rather than it sounding super regimental and to track and stuff like that. So it sounds sort of different in the sense that it's just the bass coming through a PA, but it sounds more live than if it was just dragged from the track.
Sounds alive.
Yeah, exactly. But then the advantage of playing sort of as a 3-piece, well, I'm yet to find out because we haven't done a show that way yet, but we have been rehearsing, and it's just I think that just the vibe, you know, there's a lot more pressure on me as a 2-piece, because it's just like I'm sort of the focal point and with the drummer, and it can be pretty energetic. My shows are always energetic, but I feel like vibe wise, it's just like, you know, it's just nice to have the 3. But I guess we'll see after Saturday, after this show. I might just think, nah, sack it off. But no, I think it'd be good. But yeah, we'll see. I think that's the more traditional way anyway, isn't it, of expanding the band. I always like to sort of try and play with as many live musicians as possible, just because it does bring something a little bit more magical to the affair.
You always see with rock bands as well. You think about like the 1975, you know, it started off with 4 guys on stage, and now when you see them, it's got, you know, backing singers and all these trumpet and saxophone players and all this business going on. It just keeps kind of building out and out and out.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, and there is a reason for that, you know. It's because it sort of makes it a little bit more of a show, I suppose.
Yeah.
It just adds to the whole production of it, and ultimately that's what it is, isn't it? It's all about putting a show on, so making it as good as it possibly can be. But even with bands like Royal Blood and stuff, they have like backing singers and things like that now, and visually that looks quite cool. So, you know, I can see why people do it.
You've got is it next month, the Dinosaur Pile-Up show as well?
Yeah, I've got one on the 16th of March, and then one on the 23rd as well, yeah.
Because you started off selling merch for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've known those guys and I've tour managed them as well for years. So I've been all over the world with those guys, and I know them really well, and they're some of my best friends. And I use Mike, the drummer, from them for a lot of my shows. Obviously, with this one, when we're playing together, it's not going to happen. I wouldn't put him through playing 2 sets a night. But yeah, so I mean, that's really nice. That's a really good friendship that we have between us, and yeah, Yeah, love the guys, yeah.
How old were you when you sold merch for them?
Well, I'll tell you what, it started out, it's funny because I went to see them as a band before I knew them when I was back in Devon in this city called Exeter. I went to see them. I dragged a load of people that I was working with to a show for a band that no one had ever heard of. I was like, that'd be great, honestly. Yeah, so I went to watch them, and then like a couple of years later, after I'd moved to London, they just so happened to be shooting like a music video, and one of my friends was like, "Oh, I should go." I think they were asking like an open casting for it, asking for people to go down. Like Sunday, I think it was, and I was like, "Yeah, all right, like the band, why not?" So I did, met them there, and then just got on really well, and then yeah, they invited me to go on a tour selling merch for him. But I guess I must have been like, I don't know, early 20s, like 21 or something like that. I can't remember, but yeah, a little. Been doing it for years, so it's hard to think about that. I don't know, 8 years or something I've been working with. I don't know. Yeah.
What were your ambitions? What were your goals, your kind of aims as a young 20-year-old? What were you thinking about when you were looking at the future?
Oh, God knows. I probably wasn't looking that far into it, to be honest. I know that I just sort of disbanded from a band of mine at the time that I sort of had put a lot into and was pretty disheartened by the fact that it disbanded. But I mean, at that age, everyone's sort of, when you're so young, and then everyone starts going to uni and whatnot and move into different parts of the country. So that's sort of what did that for us, sort of broke that up. And then so I was pretty broken about that, if I remember rightly. And then I moved to the city, moved to London, started doing that, doing merch and whatnot for bands and traveling, and then I suppose I thought, well, this is all right for me. You know, this is quite good. Getting to see a lot of nice places and travel with your friends and stuff like that. But there's always like rungs of the ladder to go up, you know, if you do merch. And I was like, well, I can expand from this, and then ultimately end up being tour manager, which is probably like one of the higher roles anyway. And you start looking after literally everything. So I suppose I kind of had that aspiration, you know. It's the same with anything really. You always want to sort of keep progressing. Same with Jaws now, you know, it's like starting out, but I know where I want to get to, and it's up there. So yeah, probably the same thing, just having a lot of fun along the way and not really thinking about it too much, but I guess it was always in the back of my mind.
Yeah, you kind of have these broad long-term goals, but then you're focused also on the day-to-day and just being happy in your sort of current existence.
Yeah, totally. And it was, you know, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of hangovers, from what I remember rightly. Which is, you know, a consequence of fun.
I guess there's a parallel, like what we were just saying there, there's a parallel with that too in lockdown, and how that kind of forces just to focus on the everyday and focus on the smaller things and kind of be living more so in the moment. Because when you started writing for this in London, you went back to Devon, right?
Yeah.
How long were
exactly.
were you back there for?
Well, I planned on being there for about 3 weeks because I didn't know how long this thing was going to last, you know. So I think I literally took like 3 t-shirts, a couple of pairs of jeans, in like a backpack. I was like, this would be fine. We'll just ride this one out. Because no one knew at the time like how long that was going to last. And I think it ended up being there for like 7 months in the end. So yeah, it just kept getting worse, didn't it? It was like, okay, all right. Oh, now this is happening. Okay, now that's happening. Now I can't even get back to London if I wanted to. So, and it was nicer, to be fair, rather than sitting in my like pokey little flat in London and not really being able to leave it and go for walks and whatnot. I thought if I go down to Devon and sit in the countryside, there's no sort of distractions there. There's fields and like rivers and nice stuff to, you know, go and get my hours exercise. You know, that was the thought process behind that. And yeah, like I say, no sort of distraction. So it was super fortunate and helpful for my writing, actually. And I think, in fact, I was quite scared about coming back to London and everything sort of opening up again and seeing friends and whatnot, because I thought, well, this is going to distract me a lot now, and I'm not really going to be able to write as frequently, because writing every day in Devon, because, you know, one, I enjoyed it, and two, there was nothing else I could really do. And so I'd set myself challenges and goals to sort of have X amount of songs, you know, by the time I moved back to London. And then I sort of wanted to set myself a challenge when I moved back to sort of keep up with that. It has definitely slowed down since I've been up here, but then again, it always was destined to. But I've managed to keep up the sort of prolific writing, which is really nice. But I do think, like, if I was going to do it properly and I needed to sit down and get an album together, I probably would go back down to the countryside, not necessarily Devon, but somewhere, and just sort of isolate myself for a little bit, because I found that quite quite productive and useful for me.
When was the last time you'd had a period like that prior to lockdown?
Never. Wow. No. I mean, I was just constantly away on tour, and sometimes I'd be away for a couple of months at a time, come back, be back for like a few days, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, but then be off again for another month or whatever. So, there's not a lot of downtime to do anything really.
Was it ever a struggle kind of readapting to everyday life when you're away and you're on the move so much, and then you come back and you're kind of just here for a couple of weeks?
Yeah, you just try and cram everything into a short period of time, like, and see, friends and family and all that sort of stuff, and have fun, not be at work for a little bit. But I'll experience the same stuff when I start properly touring with Jaws. It won't be as frequent, of course, because to make a living the way I was, I would have to go between bands and sort of various different tours, whereas for me, if I'm doing it for just myself, I won't be constantly away to make a living. So it'll be a lot more chill doing it when I get up and running properly. Did any of the songs in this EP, did they come from that period when you were in Devon? All of them. Yeah.
All of them?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, the EP is called Another Day in Paradise, and it was, it's kind of a couple, well, there's a bit of a double meaning there. One, ironically, because every day was exactly the same, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, so it was anything but paradise. So that's a bit tongue in cheek. However, the actual location I was in was pretty nice, so it was sort of just my way of saying, well, it could be worse. It just seemed like an appropriate title to call that EP. But yeah, they were all conceived there anyway, and then I perfected them when I got back and was able to get into a studio here. I went down to Eastbourne and got in with a producer and sort of tweak them, fine-tune them and stuff. So
who did you go in with?
I went in with a chap called Theo Verney, who's a producer and musician as well. A great guy, lovely guy, love Theo. Shout out Theo. We went into a studio called Echo Zoo in Eastbourne, sort of residential studio, so you can stay there over the course of however long you're there recording. So that was nice to get away for a little bit. I think we were still kind of in lockdown there, but you were able to travel for like work reasons, at that time. So that's sort of how I'll go around that one.
How many songs were you working on? Or how many did you bring into that environment?
In lockdown, I wrote probably around 50. Wow. So I had a lot. And I've still just carried on writing, so I've got a lot now. But I only went in and recorded 4. We were going to potentially do 5, but we ended up running out of time in the end. So I recorded 4. I just wanted to do 4 that felt kind of appropriate to that period when I wrote them, and that I thought would flow nicely between one another, really, and at the same time give quite like as broad a spectrum on my writing as you possibly can do in a batch of 4 songs.
What is your, with you writing so many songs, for lack of a better description, what is your process of elimination like? How do you narrow it down to this particular 4 when you've got so many to pick from?
Yeah, it's quite hard. And also, everyone always, well, I don't say everyone, I certainly do, I prefer, I think it's just a natural thing, but I prefer the newer ones I've written versus the ones that are slightly older, because they've been sat with you for a little bit longer, and the newer ones are always fresh. So you want to go in and, do what you feel is the best thing, but it's not always the case that the newest is the best. So it just means a case of I normally just sit sit them all in a private SoundCloud link, and I'll go on a long drive or walk, and I'll sort of sit together, and I'll sit songs together and listen to them all in a row, and just sort of which ones I'm vibing with, and sort of I'll make notes in my phone, and I'll put like various different songs together in little batches, and then I'll sort of whittle it down that way. So it can be quite hard to whittle it down. And there were definitely a few that could have gone on that EP that I did really want to put on there, but I thought, I'll be putting more stuff out soon enough, so it's not, I don't need to rush to whack everything on the first one. It's just like just sort of do one EP here and see what the reaction is there, and then do another one. You can still, I've been in and recorded a second EP already now, which is already done.
How soon did you head after and get that second one?
Well, I've only done the second one recently. I mean, this EP was supposed to be, this one that I'm dropping on Friday was supposed to be out, quite a long time ago now, but because of the delay in shipment and manufacturing of vinyl, everything sort of got pushed back, and I didn't want to leave it super long between the EP coming out online and then like 7 months between that and people actually being able to get a physical copy of it, because I mean it just didn't sit that right with me. So we sort of pushed it back for in the end quite a long time, until we sort of got the go ahead from the manufacturing plant that they were going to be ready. But as soon as I knew that, then I was like, right, I need to get in and do the other one then. Or another one. I think that's it's eased up a little bit now in terms of the time taken to manufacture, so I don't anticipate it being quite so long between this EP coming out and the next one coming out now. So or certainly songs coming out soon enough anyway.
We spoke about the opening to this one and the title track, Turn on the Day in Paradise, which you follow with Cold Feet. Were you pulling from a particular period in your life for that one, or was it more general feelings? Yeah, no,
I did write that after having a birthday party, basically. That was a song that was bashed out in honestly about 20 minutes. Just sort of felt super natural, I wanted the energy. I wanted it to feel like it was a party, like it was about a party, because it was. And, I'm fairly sure it might have even been the day afterwards. So I was feeling pretty weird.
Birthdays can be depressing. Like, it's not something that's spoken about very much, but there's something very melancholic about them, particularly because they bring on so much kind of reminiscence and looking back at. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, it was definitely like, it was that feeling that you kind of get when you're after an evening, that sometimes you can get, and you just sort of question everything. Like, and in this one, it was like, if I even just left now, like this city or wherever I am at this time, would anyone care? Would my friends even care? You're questioning like things like that, like friendships and whatnot. That's not to say that they, that is the case. It's just like, these are sometimes the thoughts that you go through when, in those dark times following the fun times, let's say.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the things too about being a part of like the local music scene or the local music industry, is that something I noticed in the first lockdown, that you had particular people who you thought that you were friends with, that you were, and you kept in touch with them and you were doing the Zoom calls. But there was also quite a large group of people that perhaps I knew through the scene that kind of just fell away, and it became very apparent that you only really knew each other through your creative projects and kind of the ground that was shared there, and it wasn't really proper kind of friendships, and there was no real roots to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. No, I get that 100%. I had something very similar, as I'm sure everybody did. Really, it's your real and true friends are when they're the ones that are checking in on you and just zoom in out of the blue, or inviting you to an online pub quiz, stuff like that, and that was like, I actually did start one of those as well. We had a weekly one, and that was just really nice, because we'd end up being on it for hours, just catching up, throughout the week. We actually did something as well, me and my friends, where every Sunday we would all of us, we'd sort of choose an album that we wanted everyone to listen to. Maybe it could be as popular as, you know, as whatever, or not. And so, but we'd all sit on Zoom and sort of, I think we'd like share the screen or share the audio or whatever. And then you literally just sit back and just listen to an album from start to finish, just whatever, you know, someone whose turn it was to choose something had chosen. So it could be something completely, you know, off the wall that I wouldn't necessarily go for, or it could be something that, you know, you grew up with where you're just singing every word. But it was nice. It was just nice to sit back and just like have a beer. You know, you'd see your friends, but you wouldn't actually necessarily be saying much. I think we maybe stop it after every song and like have a chat about it.
Yeah. But you're kind of just sharing in this experience together.
Totally. And that was quite a beautiful thing to do, I think, actually, you know, at that time, because there's no right or wrong path to choose when at that particular moment in time. So it was quite a nice way of socializing in a way.
With what we were saying about Cold Feet a few moments back, and that looking back and that kind of questioning everything that prompted that song, what role do you think self-doubt plays in creativity and creating music for you, if it has a role at all?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't really... I see it happen to a lot of people, and I do see a lot of people changing their minds or being quite indecisive with stuff, which I guess could be put down to being, you know, or having self-doubt. Doesn't really... Well, you know, fortunately, it hasn't really factored into anything that I do yet. I'm quite content with what I'm doing and quite happy with it. And I'm pretty driven by that and don't tend to have an awful lot of self-doubt. I mean, I suppose I've got a lot of confidence in what I do and I trust my ability to do it and to deliver. If it's not to say that there's stuff that I've made and I've gone back to it and I thought, don't like it, because I have. But that's not me doubting that I wouldn't be able to do something to it or make it better. And I don't often, you know, question what I'm doing or my process behind it, fortunately. And hopefully that doesn't change, because it's quite nice being like, you know, not restricted and held back by that. But yeah, that's just me anyway, personally.
But then a song like Still Young has this edge to it where it's sort of looking at self-criticism and being a little bit too self-critical. Is that then less music-centric and more just generalized about being self-critical about yourself as a person? Or
yeah, and it's not necessarily even about me. It's sort of more of a broader stroke, and sort of just, you know, I think these days, and certainly after like a lockdown, you know, when people were on social media and stuff all the time, like a lot of the time as well, you know, like all day, every day, and that can have such a massive effect on your mental health and your well-being. And that is a song like Still Young is basically just saying, like, don't worry about that. If you can of course help, but don't compare yourself to anybody else. Don't think that just because this person is younger and they're doing so well that you should have done that or you should be doing that. There's no time frame on anything really. Age is just a number, you know. It's you're as young as you feel, and if you want to do something, do it. You know, it's just saying like, it's saying that there is that that sort of period of reflection, but ultimately it's quite like for me it's quite like a uplifting message behind it, behind like a veiled melancholic,
quite an uplift. But I think I saw a quote from you where you said that we're never told to make positive changes.
Well, you're not.
No, exactly, yeah. What do you feel are some positive changes you've kind of made in your life in the last year?
Some positive changes that I've made in my life this past year.
We're getting a little bit therapy-esque.
Yeah. I should be on a chaise long. Some positive changes. I've learnt to be more patient with people. I suppose doing this for me and being a solo act, and doing everything myself, I always have super high like expectations of myself, and I used to sort of try and expect the same level of commitment and drive behind stuff as me. But you do realize that not everyone has the same view as you, because they're not personally invested in it. So with something like music and especially my music, I'd want to just feel that people are like, I need this to do as well as it's going to do, or whatever. But you've got to understand that people have other stuff going on, and just because you want it and you want it now, it doesn't mean that it's going to physically be able to happen. So, and that has taught me to be way more patient and calm in those situations. Not that I was some raging monster before, but that used to but it did used to sort of annoy me a little bit. But I just sort of understand now that it is just kind of more chilled, and to just sort of be more chilled with people and just be nice in general. Like, you get way further in life by being just nice to people. And I just don't feel like, sometimes when I be a tour manager, there are certain aspects of that role which make you have to be a little bit forceful, or you just have to have a bit of a way about you that makes people give you, or ultimately whoever you're working with, what it is that you're asking for and what you want. So you have to be a bit brash about it. I don't necessarily like that. It's not really where my personality would go to naturally. So I've sort of learnt to just be a bit nicer in general anyway, because it did sort of turn me into a bit of a I don't know, not a nasty person.
I know what you mean though, but because I work with a lot of tour managers through doing this, and particularly when I first started, and I think I was like 17 or something, a lot of them do come across as cunts, but you have to remember that that they've been on the road for like a few months or whatever, and that was always the thing that kind of bore in mind, that being on the road for 3 months, probably not having enough sleep, people aren't going to be always buoyant. No,
exactly. Well, that is true, but then again, like, it's not your fault, is it? So you shouldn't be spoken to in some sort of condescending way just because someone's had less kip than you. Do you know what I mean? Like, but that is something that I've tried improving on, and I've just tried making, a positive change on my attitude and general outlook on life, really, I think. So that's the main one, really. I think, like, even starting Jaws the Shark was a positive change for me, because it's something that I had wanted to do, and I don't think I realised how much I wanted to do it until I've actually started doing it now, because I just really enjoy it, and nothing feels like it's not nothing feels like it's a chore, but it certainly feels like it's, I don't mind doing stuff that I would otherwise feel, pretty just not as enthused by if it wasn't for me.
Before we wrap this up, I feel I would be remiss if I didn't mention Peep Show, as one huge fan of the show to another. The show from which your band takes its name, your musical project takes its name. How often do you have that on repeat? Is it one of these ones? I feel like it's something I've always kind of got kicking on in the background when I'm cooking or whatever.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's one of those ones, actually, if for me, if I've gone to bed and there's nothing else on, I don't watch a lot of telly, to be honest with you. I kind of stick to the old classics, or my classics, in that sense. So if I'm going to bed and I've just got a laptop on me, I'll whack Peep Show on, or I'll whack The Office on, or I'll whack It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on, or something like that.
All the classics.
All the classics. And I just find it, like you say, I know, and I'm sure you do, the episodes inside out now, word for word, a lot of it. So it's just like comforting, and just one of those ones that you can just really chill to, and I quite like that. Not Always Sunny necessarily, it's very shouty, that one, isn't it? But still comforting to me though in some way. But yeah, I still have that on quite a lot, to be honest. And even better when it comes to that episode where they bang on about Jaws the shark.
One of the best episodes.
Yeah, it's yeah. That was just a complete happy accident as well, because it was at a time when I was like, what should I call myself? Like, I've always been like a real shark nerd, like always since I was a kid. I wanted to, when I was younger, I'm talking like 10. I just like used to collect like a load of magazines and subscription sort of magazines and things like that, and it would send me different shark ones every week or something. So I just used to read up on that. I think I wanted to be like a marine biologist by the time I was about 12 years old, just study sharks. Obviously that didn't happen, but my fascination has remained.
Did you ever get any shark teeth and stuff when you were growing up?
Yeah.
I remember a few of them. Yeah.
I had a tiger shark necklace, or like just one tiger shark tooth.
Surfer style necklaces, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember it as well, because I used to run around a lot, playing football and whatnot, and I'd wear this thing and it just used to come up and just catch me in the eye.
Oh, man.
Flick up and I'd be getting toothed to the eye. And so I had to stop wearing it for a bit. God knows where that actually is now, though. Someone would probably dig it up somewhere in some field in Devon somewhere.
In a few hundred years, someone will be kicking about with a metal detector and they'll come up on that necklace.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what my fascination of sharks has remained. And then I was watching that episode and they kept banging on about Jaws the shark and how that was its name, and it was sort of like a light bulb went on. I was like, well, that's that then.